Om Shanti. How are you all? Today we are going to see a very important problem, mental related OCD. That is, they have this obsessive thought of having sex with gods or goddesses, or they want to throw stones or slippers at idols of God. So this troubles them a lot because they happen to be someone who believes in God, who worships God wholeheartedly. Despite that, they have this thought of abusing God. It is beyond their control. So after having such thoughts, they literally cry. They even misbehave with others. They behave violently with their family members. So the reason is there is this guilty feeling of them abusing God without even desiring to do so. So there are many reasons for this. To understand this, you can go back to your teenage when you first started developing thoughts of infatuation on opposite sex. It comes automatically. Sometimes you will develop infatuation on your teachers, on your neighbors, like that. You don't even know how it happened, and you will start developing more and more sexual thoughts automatically, out of nowhere, because you didn't do that before. You didn't have that habit. How did it happen all of a sudden? Likewise, you may be considered a very calm person, but all of a sudden, in one particular situation, you just burst out of anger. So everybody around you see you in surprise, because that's not the person you are. Even you are surprised of what happened to you. So the root cause of all these problems, including having sexual thoughts on God, comes not from this birth, but from your past births. For that, you need to understand that you are not this body. You are totally separate from this body. You are this soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of wearing some religious symbol in between the eyebrows to represent that we actually reside here. So this soul, it takes birth after birth. So at the time of death, the predominant characters possessed by that person is being carried by that soul to the next birth. That's how these things happen. Have you ever wondered why world is degrading gradually? Because see, now the crime rate is increasing even within children, because they were in their past birth very criminal, so they had this criminal thought, so it just emerged out of them all of a sudden in a very younger age when they are slightly stimulated. They don't need much stimulation for them to exhibit that criminal behavior now, because it's already there. They were filled with that. So just a slight stimulation is enough. Just like that, coming to this problem. Okay, before that, we all know everybody is addicted to sex for the past few generations, people are so much addicted to sex, especially this generation, after the evolving of internet and technology. So you can see the doctors, they all say sex is good, you can have sex till your death. So after listening to it repeatedly, nothing stops them from indulging in sex. Though they have this inherent quality of disapproval towards sex, but these doctors, they hypnotize you against that. So you indulge in sex till death. So obviously your mind is going to be predominantly occupied by sexual thoughts at your deathbed. So once you leave the body, your soul carries the sexual thoughts. So it needs just a slight stimulation. That's enough for it to explode. That is why the kids these days are engaging in sexual behavior at a very younger age that is quite unimaginable by us. So at a very young age, while they see their teacher teaching in the blackboard, when the student seeing her bare back or the neck, they immediately get stimulated at a very young age. They start developing these sexual thoughts, not at the time of teaching, but once they reach home. Somehow it comes automatically because it was there from the past birth. So it comes automatically, just a slight stimulation. This happens even before the advent of television. But now, after so many cable channels and internet, YouTube, it's very difficult to even guess what today's kids are going through. And this society is actually it encourages such stimulation by love songs, by movies, by friends, communication between friends. So nothing discourages them from stopping these activities, these thoughts, this fantasizing. So when their mind is so much crowded with these kind of sexual thoughts, at one point they will start act on those thoughts. That is when they start behaving criminally, illegal sexual acts like adultery, rape, child abuse. Everything happens because of their lack of control over these thoughts. And now coming to today's topic, having abusive thoughts on God, this happens because of many reasons. First, several years back or several decades or centuries back, people, they invade other countries and start destroying the religions by demolishing statues of that place. So if someone happens to be that person or the soldier of that king who orders to demolish the temples, so he may or may not have faith on that. If he has faith, it is going to be even more difficult because he is just forced to do that. So fearing his life, he is doing that. At the same time, he will have the thought that what he is doing is wrong, because it is deeply connected emotionally. because it is his own God he is demolishing. So that thought is deeply recorded in his mind, so that whenever in the present birth he steps into the temple, he starts getting those abusive thoughts, like demolishing the statue, throwing stones at it, throwing urine, feces at it, several things. And another thing is, you might be taking birth in a different religion where they don't encourage idol worship. They even encourage you to demolish idols that you had been worshipping till then. So you would be demolishing, you will be throwing that out. So that is deeply seated. Now you are born into another religion where idol worship is encouraged, and now you believe in it. But still, in your mind, it is deeply recorded that whenever you see the statue, you should act against it. That is why when you see the statue either at your home or in temple, you will start developing those thoughts. Just like when you see a girl, you start developing sexual thoughts automatically. Just like that, this also happens. So both of this is quite abnormal. Even having sexual thoughts on seeing a girl, no matter how beautiful she is, it is still abnormal. But since the whole world is addicted to that, people think it's normal, but it is not. And regarding having sex with goddesses or gods, that is basically due to the fact that he or she might have been born into an atheist family, or he would have converted in the middle in his past birth. So he would be preaching against God. So, and for that he wanted to abuse God. So he spent most of his life abusing God sexually. So they would be writing stories sexually against God. They might be drawing pictures sexually against God. You can find a lot of such pictures on internet on all religions. So that is again another reason for having sexual thoughts, though you worship God in this birth. And now when you get such thoughts, you feel so emotionally disturbed. You will start crying, you will feel very guilty for that. And this is the law of karma. You sinned in one birth and you are paying the price for it in this birth. Doesn't mean it doesn't have a solution. It has a solution. We will come back to it pretty soon. And another thing is, especially in Hindu temples, you will see some erotic statues. So there is a spiritual reason for that. Despite that, if you are an atheist in your previous birth, obviously you will find no guilt in fantasizing such statues. So you might be fantasizing such statues while indulging in sexual acts. So that becomes your habit. So that becomes recorded so deeply that it comes out automatically in this current birth, even though you believe in God now. So that itself is the punishment for your atheistic behavior in your past birth. Again, the law of karma plays its role. And in India, there is the habit of calling out the Holy Spirit, not the Christian Holy Spirit, so Holy Spirit of deities, into a man's body during the festival times. So they will dance without their conscious mind. So when it happens to a married woman, everybody worships her temporarily for that time while she was dancing. When such girl was having sex with her husband, obviously her husband will have this thought that he's having sex with God. So he would be hesitating to do that, but still for some reason he will still be having sex with her, but still his mind now has the godly image on his wife, so he will feel guilty. So in the next birth he will automatically have these thoughts of having sex with God. This is also one of the reasons for that. And another reason is something you will understand only when I say about God's knowledge of this time cycle of 5000 years called Kalpa. So this 5000 years is a Kalpa, and whatever happens in one Kalpa, that keeps repeating Kalpa after Kalpa accurately. To understand it, if you are watching this video now, it obviously means you watched it in the previous Kalpa on the very same day, and you will again be watching the same video in the next Kalpa on the very same day. So it would be 2021 every single time you watch this video. So it's that accurate, and the first half of this Kalpa is heaven. The same world which we live in now was heaven in the beginning, and the world becomes hell in the last 2500 years. God comes in the end. He enters an old man's body and he names him Brahma because he doesn't take birth like us from a mother's womb. So he enters him directly. Till then, God resided here. This is the supreme abode where not only God but we souls, before taking birth in earth, resides along with God. This world is a golden red colored light world. So God is also a soul just like us. That is why he is called Supreme Soul, Param Atma. Only difference is he stays away from this birth and death cycle. So in heaven we were called deities. We were still humans, but we were called deities because we had these divine qualities. We didn't have devilish qualities like lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. So that is why Hindus still build temples for these deities and worship these deities, because they were so pure, like a newborn baby. No matter what their age is, they will still be pure. They will not even have the thought of impurity like lust, anger, greed, attachment. So they were always loving towards each other. They will always be at peace. They will always be pure. Pure at sight, pure at words. So that's what they were. Where have they gone? They haven't gone anywhere. They were taking rebirth after rebirth after rebirth till they reach here. So it is you and me who were deities in the beginning, or else you wouldn't be watching this video this long. Only if you are deity, you will be interested in watching these things even though the video is so long. The reason there were no vices like lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego is they were soul conscious. They didn't consider themselves to be this perishable body. Instead, they considered themselves to be the imperishable soul that controls this body. So they look at each other as a soul. They know it naturally. That is the reason they didn't fall for the vices. These vices are called Maya or Ravan or Satan. But Satan comes into being in the next half of this kalpa, where we become body conscious and become addicted to the sensual pleasures. While in heaven, we ourselves were the embodiment of bliss, because that's the true nature of soul. Since we were soul conscious, our consciousness were here. So we experienced intense joy continuously. It didn't depend on the external environment. But now, after becoming body conscious, we depend on the environment for the pleasure. So whatever pleasure we derive from the environment, that's not going to last longer, and more, it's definitely going to bring pain and suffering in the end. So because of becoming addicted to the sensual pleasures, we also become slaves for these 5 vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So whenever we have thoughts induced by these 5 vices, that is called sin. So whether you have thought of it, whether you act upon it, you are just doing sin after sins. So that is how we started experiencing pain, which is nothing but the punishment for the sins we have committed. And now we have more sins in everybody's soul. So that is the main reason we are getting punishment in the form of different diseases, poverty, natural calamities, and several world wars. So as I said, here deities, they don't have sex, but they still get married and give birth to the young ones, not through sex, but through the power of yoga, that is the power of the thought. When the couple has this thought of having a kid, the wife gets pregnant. So that's the power of their thought. That is because they are not corrupted with these vicious thoughts. That is why they can make their thoughts to happen. But now in hell, it doesn't turn into hell just like that. It takes some time. So the first lustful thought is, all of a sudden the husband start seeing his wife a bit longer than usual. So he has this unconscious thought that she looks beautiful. That's the first lust, or the first sin humans ever commit. But they were still deities, right? So even today, you remember when you had this first sexual encounter, how guilty you felt, no matter whether you are male or female. It would be very guilty, right? But still, we had been fantasizing for a long before we had this first sexual encounter. But here, they didn't have sexual thoughts at all, because they were totally unaware of it. For the first 2500 years, they were very pure, just like God. So this God is called Shiva by Hindus, Allah by Muslims, Heavenly Godfather by Christians. So God is one. So we deities were equal to God for the first half of the Kalpa. But when we start having lustful thoughts and start indulging in sexual acts, you can guess it for yourself how guilty we would have felt, how emotionally disturbed we would be. So that gets recorded so deeply that birth after birth, whenever we see these statues in the temples, we start getting sexual thoughts. Because we were ourselves deities when we had sex for the first time. Only then we stopped calling ourselves to be deities, and then we started calling ourselves as Hindus. Because India was heaven in the beginning, which is why 33 million deities are worshipped only in India by Hindus. So these are some of the reasons you are getting these sexual thoughts when you go to temple or whenever you have thoughts of God. Not only that, even when you have sex with your spouse, even then you will get these thoughts or these dreams. Why? Because that is also induce you into having the past thoughts from your past births. So what is the solution? Most of the time you will get these thoughts only after having first sexual encounter. Till then you wouldn't be having that. It would be there in the mind, but still you need some stimulating factor. Now obviously you are having sex frequently, either through mind or physically. That is the reason those thoughts keeps coming repeatedly. To stop it, you need to do these things. First, stop all sorts of sexual activities and separate yourself from all sexual inducing things, whether it's human or image or movies, social media. You have to separate yourself from that, from friends. And now when you deeply involve yourself spiritually, obviously you will have these thoughts initially, but for our mind to be able to repeat something, you either need to record it emotionally once or you need to repeat it quite often. For example, nobody forgets the alphabets that we learned much earlier because of the repeating those things over and over again, so we don't forget for life. Likewise, just think how many times we would have repeated these thoughts for us to carry this even birth after birth. So to remove that, we need to replace it with positive thoughts. This feeling of guilty is also essential. That's not bad, that's good. Because every time you have that thought, you feel guilty, so you are ordering your mind that it is not good to have those thoughts. So your mind eventually removes that thought pattern and put healthy thought pattern in place. So every time you have that thought, immediately you stop it and replace it with the God is very divine, God is very pure. So don't even give the mind to think on its own. Don't give such time. Immediately after getting those negative thoughts of having sexual thought or abusive thought on God, you replace it with the praise of God on what God does. God comes in the end and He gives His introduction that He is a point of light and we are also a point of light. So obviously we didn't have abusive thought on God, instead we had abusive thought on deities. who were no one but us. So, of course, now we are worth getting abused because we don't possess those divine qualities anymore. But still, now after getting this knowledge of God directly from God, we start developing divine qualities. So we are no longer worth getting abused. And again, God through Brahma's mouth gives this knowledge called Murli on daily basis. So it will be new all the time. It will be so mind refreshing. So you need to listen to it daily and repeat the important points throughout the day. You have to repeat it to yourself. So those negative thoughts, not only the abusive thoughts on God, no matter what negative thought you have, whether it's due to the death of your loved ones or due to betrayal, all those negative thoughts will soon go out of your mind and you will feel yourself happy all over again. Only when you have lustful thoughts on seeing the opposite sex that you will have lustful thoughts on God as well. So you need to stop having lustful thoughts on opposite sex. The way to do that is to see them as deities, because they are going to be converted to deities all over again. If you are married, then you can see your spouse as a deity, so that you develop respect for them. So that will enhance your family life. It is the lust that spoils the family life, but nobody is aware of it. That is the root cause of all problem, whether it's ego, anger, attachment, everything stems out of the number one enemy called lust. That is why God says lust is the greatest enemy, conquer it. But we don't have the power now to conquer it. That is why we need to remember God as much as possible. We need to consider ourselves to be the soul and connect our mind to God. So, more we connect our mind to God, more we can get rid of these 5 vices, especially lust. So, not only that you get rid of those lustful thoughts on God, but you get rid of all vices altogether. So, what do you gain? Ever blissful, ever happy, ever peaceful life. Not only that, the more you remember God, more vices are going to get washed off, which means your soul is getting purer and purer, just like God. It is just a matter of effort. What is the effort? Just remembering God as much as possible. When to remember God? Right from the time you woke up from bed. So better time to wake up is early in the morning, as early as 3 a.m. or even 2 a.m. So from that moment on, you can spend the first 1 hour or more sitting in remembrance of God, which is the true meditation. And after that, you can carry on with your daily routines while your mind is connected with God. So that is what called as karma yoga. Because for the past 2500 years, we were obsessed with sinful thoughts. So cleaning your mind out of those thoughts is not a petty task. So we need to put more effort consciously. So if you manage to purify your mind 100%, then you will enter heaven in the beginning itself, so that you can enjoy heaven for 2500 years, where there is no traces or signs of sorrow or pain of any sort. Right from birth till death, you will never cry out loud or within yourself. All you experience there is happiness. Whatever you see, you will feel happy. Whatever you listen, you will feel happy. But if you spend very little time in remembering God, you will not become as pure as you are required to enter heaven in the beginning. So what happens? When the world gets destroyed, as it happens at the end of each kalpa, because that is how the hell becomes heaven. So at that time, all soul, no matter how purified or not purified it has become, it will still be leaving this world and enter the soul world from where it came originally. From there, if it is 100% pure, then it will enter in the beginning. If it is just 80% pure, it will enter after some time. Till then, it will be there. It's more like a dead state where there is absolutely no consciousness at all. So if you are just 50% pure, then you will enter here. If you are just 10% pure, you will just be entering towards the end of the heaven. So you will be experiencing very little joy of heaven. So what is the smart thing to do? To enter in the beginning. For that, we need to remember God as much as possible. That's the only solution to come out of all OCD problems, including the sexual thoughts on God. And especially in the early morning from 3 to 5 a.m., you start having the thoughts of considering yourself as a soul and remembering God as a point of light. You repeat it yourself as many times as possible so that it becomes deeply recorded, so that the unwanted thoughts you recorded previously from your past births, they get washed off eventually. So the early morning is the best time, because after the sunrise, your mind becomes so active that it starts developing many thoughts, so that you will have no control over your mind. But in the early morning, it is very easy to have control over your mind, so that you fill it with positive thoughts, so that it keeps you energized to face the rest of the day. No matter what trouble comes in front of you, you will handle it in a more matured way. Why? Because your mind is still in your control. So all psychological related problems can be cured by waking up early in the morning. So that is the first and the foremost step to come out of any psychological problem. Not only that, you need to listen to Murli, that is the direct knowledge of God, that is available in all Raj Yoga meditation centers, totally free of cost, because it is given directly by God. Also, it's available online in YouTube and websites. I'll be giving the link for it in the description below this video. So the knowledge of God called Murli is available in all languages. So you choose your preferred language and listen to it daily, especially early in the morning. So that is very essential, as much as remembering God. And also make God your best friend, your husband or wife, your mother, your father. You make him into all relationships, so that whatever you see, whomever you meet, you remember only God. So your mind is now completely pure. So it is only out of purity comes the peacefulness and blissfulness. So stay in remembrance the whole day, remembrance of God the whole day, thereby remain peaceful and blissful the whole day. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit on the like button and please leave your valuable comments in the comment section, and share this video with your friends and relatives, and subscribe the channel if you haven't subscribed.